Hollywood is supposed to be the land of dreams, fame, and red carpets. But what if some of its biggest stars met endings far more shocking than anything written in a movie script? From legendary actors and chart-topping musicians to fashion icons and rising talents, they had money, success, and millions of fans. Yet none of that could protect them from what happened next. Some were betrayed by the people they trusted most. Others became victims of random violence. And a few deaths remain surrounded by mystery to this day. Buckle up, because these real-life Hollywood horror stories are darker, stranger, and more unbelievable than any thriller ever made. Number 1. David Huffman. In the 1970s and 80s, David Huffman had the kind of Hollywood career many actors would gladly trade their gym membership for. A talented leading man with a growing list of film and television credits, he seemed destined for many more years in the spotlight. But sometimes a real-life writes endings so bizarre that even Hollywood producers would reject them for being too unbelievable. On February 27, 1985, Huffman's story came to a shocking end at just 39 years old. While at a park in San Diego, an altercation broke out between the actor and a 16-year-old teenager. What started as a confrontation quickly escalated into tragedy, leaving Huffman fatally stabbed with a screwdriver. One moment he was a respected actor with a promising future, and the next his life was over in a way no one could have predicted. Hollywood has produced countless dramatic fight scenes, but David Huffman's final chapter proved that reality can be stranger, darker, and far more heartbreaking than anything ever filmed. Number 2. Karen Kupchinet. Hollywood loves a good success story, and in the early 1960s, Karen Kupchinet looked like she was living one. The young actress appeared in projects such as The Little Shop of Horrors, The Gertrude Berg Show, and G.E. True. As the daughter of legendary Chicago columnist Irv Kupchinet, she grew up around fame, but Karen wasn't relying on family connections alone. She had talent, ambition, and a bright future ahead of her. At just 22 years old, it seemed like she was only one big role off from becoming a household name. Unfortunately, life had a much darker plot twist waiting in the wings. On November 28, 1963, Karen was found dead in her apartment, the victim of a shocking and mysterious attack. The crime stunned Hollywood and quickly became one of the entertainment industry's most puzzling cases. Despite years of theories, rumors, and investigations, the mystery surrounding her death was never fully solved. It's a cruel irony. An actress who spent her career performing in scripted stories ended up at the center of a real-life mystery with no final act and no clear ending. More than 60 years later, the questions remain, and Karen Kupchinet's tragic story continues to haunt Hollywood like an unfinished screenplay nobody has ever been able to complete. Number 3. Eddie Hassel. Most actors spend years chasing their Hollywood dream. Eddie Hassel was one of the lucky few who actually caught it. Born in Texas in 1990, he appeared in The Kids Are All Right, Surface, and Jobs, steadily building a career that seemed ready for its next big breakthrough. At just 30 years old, the future looked bright, and his Hollywood journey was only beginning. But as history has shown, fame doesn't come with a safety net. Just after 1:50 a.m. on November 1st, 2020, Hassel left his girlfriend's home in Grand Prairie, Texas. It should have been a completely ordinary night. Instead, it became the final chapter of his story. Police say he was fatally shot during a random carjacking, turning a routine moment into a tragedy that shocked friends, family, and fans. The cruel irony: Hollywood is famous for second acts and happy endings, but Eddie Hassel never got the chance to see either. Number 4. Jennifer Helene Maxwell. In Hollywood, starring alongside Elvis Presley was the kind of opportunity that could launch a career into the stratosphere. For Jennifer Helene Maxwell, it did exactly that. Best remembered for her role in Blue Hawaii in 1961, Maxwell quickly became a recognizable face in film and television. Beautiful, talented, and charismatic, she seemed to have everything going for her. But as Hollywood history has shown time and time again, sometimes the most shocking twists happen long after the cameras stop rolling. On the afternoon of June 10, 1981, Jennifer's life took a tragic turn inside the lobby of her Beverly Hills condominium. Just months after separating from attorney Irvin Roeder, both Maxwell and Roeder were caught in a deadly shooting that stunned investigators. According to reports, the attack was linked to bitter divorce and financial disputes that had been brewing behind closed doors. What was supposed to be a carefully planned scheme quickly spiraled into chaos, leaving both individuals dead. It's the kind of plot Hollywood screenwriters might have rejected for being too complicated, yet reality proved far stranger. Jennifer Maxwell had spent years entertaining audiences on screen, but her final chapter became part of a real-life drama filled with betrayal, secrets, and consequences no one could rewind or edit out. Number 5. Dick Kallman. For many actors, stepping away from Hollywood is supposed to mean a quieter life. Dick Kallman thought so too. Known for his work in film and television during the 1950s and 60s, Kallman eventually traded movie sets for the stage, touring in hit productions like How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying and Half a Sixpence. It seemed like a perfect second act, less Hollywood madness, more standing ovations, and probably a lot fewer awkward encounters with gossip reporters. But life had a darker script in mind. In 1980, Kallman became the victim of a home invasion when 3 intruders broke into his residence during a robbery. What should have been the safest place in his world became the scene of a shocking tragedy. The attackers were later caught and convicted, but that did little to ease the loss. The cruel irony is impossible to miss after leaving behind the make-believe drama of Hollywood. Dick Kallman found himself at the center of a real-life crime story far more terrifying than anything he had ever acted in. Sometimes the most frightening stories don't happen on a stage. They happen when the curtain is supposed to be closed. Number 6. Sal Mineo. Some actors spend their entire careers chasing one unforgettable role. Sal Mineo achieved that before he was even old enough to vote. Best known for playing John Plato Crawford in the 1955 classic Rebel Without a Cause, Mineo earned an Academy Award nomination at just 17 years old and quickly became one of Hollywood's brightest young stars. With hit films like Giant and Exodus under his belt, his future looked almost unstoppable. But if Hollywood teaches us anything, it's that success can attract attention from all the wrong people. On the night of February 12, 1976, Mineo returned home after rehearsing for the stage play P.S. Your Cat is Dead. It had been a normal evening, the kind actors experience thousands of times throughout their careers. But as he walked through the carport of his apartment complex, a young man looking for money targeted him in what was supposed to be a robbery. In a matter of moments, the encounter turned deadly. Mineo was fatally stabbed and died at just 37 years old. The tragedy shocked Hollywood and left fans wondering how a man who survived the chaos of fame could lose his life during such a senseless crime. The cruel irony. After spending years playing dramatic characters on screen, Sal Mineo became the victim of a real-life tragedy far more heartbreaking than any script Hollywood could have written. His killer was later arrested, convicted, and sentenced to prison. But for many fans, the loss of Sal Mineo remains one of Hollywood's most devastating endings. Number 7. Adrienne Shelly. Adrienne Shelly was the kind of talent Hollywood loves to discover, known for her memorable performances in indie films like The Unbelievable Truth and Trust. She wasn't just an actress, she was also a writer and director, determined to tell her own stories. By 2006, her passion project Waitress was generating excitement and looked ready to take her career to a whole new level. Everything seemed to be falling into place. Then came a shocking twist that no screenplay could have predicted. On November 1st, 2006, Shelley was found dead inside her Manhattan apartment. At first, the circumstances surrounding her death sparked confusion and speculation. Friends and colleagues struggled to understand how someone so talented and full of life could suddenly be gone. Hollywood is famous for dramatic plot twists, but this one was heartbreakingly real. Investigators later discovered that a 19-year-old construction worker had entered the apartment building and attempted to steal from Shelley after finding the door unsecured. What began as a simple theft turned into a devastating tragedy. The cruel irony is impossible to ignore. While Waitress would later become a beloved film and a hit Broadway musical, Adrienne Shelly never got the chance to see the incredible legacy she created. Sometimes life saves its biggest twist for the very end, and nobody sees it coming. A talented actress, a gifted storyteller, and a life taken far too soon. If Adrienne Shelly touched your heart today, leave an amen in the comments as a tribute to a dream that ended too early. Number 8. Sharon Tate. In the late 1960s, Sharon Tate was everything Hollywood was looking for. Beautiful, talented, and effortlessly charismatic, she quickly rose from small television appearances to become one of the industry's most promising young actresses. Magazine covers, movie roles, and a growing fan base suggested that stardom was only the beginning. At 26 years old and expecting her first child, Sharon appeared to have the perfect Hollywood future ahead of her. But on the night of August 8, 1969, that dream turned into one of the darkest chapters in Hollywood history. After spending the evening with friends Jay Sebring, Wojciech Frykowski, and Abigail Folger, Sharon returned to her home in Los Angeles. Just hours later, members of the infamous Manson family cult entered the property. What followed shocked the nation and instantly became one of the most notorious crimes of the 20th century. Sharon, who was 8 months pregnant at the time, and her friends became victims of a senseless act of violence that horrified the world. The tragedy marked the end of Hollywood's carefree 1960s era almost overnight. Even today, Sharon Tate's name remains a symbol of both incredible promise and heartbreaking loss. The cruel irony is that she had everything a young actress could dream of: fame, success, love, and a growing family. Yet her story became remembered not only for the career she was building, but for the shocking tragedy that forever changed Hollywood history. Number 9. Dorothy Stratton. Dorothy Stratton was living the Hollywood dream. Rising from Playboy playmate to a promising actress, she quickly won over audiences with her beauty charm and roles in films like Galaxina and They All Laughed. At just 20 years old, she was on the verge of becoming one of Hollywood's brightest new stars. To outsiders, her future looked perfect. But behind the fame and flashing cameras, her personal life was falling apart. As Dorothy's career skyrocketed, her marriage to husband and manager Paul Snider began to crumble. Unable to accept that Dorothy wanted to move on with her life and career, Snider became increasingly obsessed with her. On August 14, 1980, the two met to discuss their divorce. What should have been a difficult but ordinary conversation turned into a devastating tragedy that shocked Hollywood and made headlines across the country. The loss was especially heartbreaking because Dorothy's career was just beginning. Friends believed her biggest successes were still ahead of her. Instead, her life ended before she had the chance to reach her full potential. Hollywood eventually immortalized her story through movies, books, and documentaries, but the cruel reality remains the same. Dorothy Stratton achieved fame that would last forever, yet she never got the opportunity to enjoy the future she had worked so hard to build. Number 10. Stephanie Mosley. Hollywood is full of people chasing the spotlight, but Stephanie Mosley didn't just chase it, she earned it. Born in Vancouver, Canada, Mosley built a successful career as an actress, dancer, and performer, appearing in films such as Idlewild, Mirror, Mirror, and The Twilight Saga: Breaking Dawn Part 1. Talented, ambitious, and admired by many, she seemed to be living the kind of life that looks perfect on social media. But as we all know, Instagram rarely shows what happens behind closed doors. On December 8th, 2014, Stephanie's story took a heartbreaking turn. What appeared from the outside to be a glamorous Hollywood life suddenly unraveled inside the Los Angeles apartment she shared with her husband, music producer Earl Hayes. According to investigators, Hayes became convinced that Stephanie had been unfaithful, and a devastating domestic dispute followed. By the time police arrived, both were found dead inside the apartment. Friends and fans were left stunned, struggling to understand how a life filled with talent, opportunity, and promise could end so suddenly. The tragedy served as a chilling reminder that while Hollywood loves selling fairy tale romances, real life doesn't always come with a happy ending. Sometimes the biggest drama isn't on the movie screen, it's the one nobody sees until it's far too late. Number 11. Marie Trintignant. Marie Trintignant was one of France's most celebrated actresses, starring in more than 30 films and earning a reputation as a talented and respected performer. By 2003, she had spent decades in the spotlight and seemed to have a bright future ahead. But during a trip to Lithuania with her boyfriend, rock singer Bertrand Cantat, a private disagreement reportedly erupted after a text message arrived from her estranged husband. What should have been an ordinary argument quickly escalated into something far more serious, leaving Marie critically injured. Days later, on August 1st, 2003, Marie passed away at the age of 41. The tragedy shocked France and dominated headlines across Europe. Fans were left devastated that such a beloved actress could be lost in such heartbreaking circumstances. The cruel irony is that Marie spent her career acting in emotional dramas, yet her own final chapter became a real-life tragedy that no audience was prepared to witness. More than 2 decades later, her story remains one of the most controversial and heartbreaking cases in entertainment history. Number 12. Gianni Versace. Gianni Versace wasn't just a fashion designer, he was a fashion superstar. As the founder of the Versace empire, he turned luxury clothing into a symbol of power, glamour, and celebrity culture. By the 1990s, his designs were worn by some of the world's biggest stars, and his name had become synonymous with success. If fashion had a Hollywood Walk of Fame, Versace would have owned several blocks of it. But on the morning of July 15th, 1997, everything changed. After taking a routine walk along Miami Beach's famous Ocean Drive to pick up magazines, Versace returned to his mansion. As he climbed the front steps, an armed man suddenly approached and shot him at close range. The legendary designer was rushed to the hospital, but was later pronounced dead. He was only 50 years old. The tragedy shocked the fashion world and instantly became one of the most infamous celebrity crimes in history. The cruel irony is that Versace spent his life creating beauty, luxury, and unforgettable style only for his final moments to become front-page news around the world. Decades later, his designs remain timeless, proving that while his life ended far too soon, the Versace legacy never went out of fashion. Number 13. Roger Troutman. Roger Troutman was a music innovator whose influence can still be heard today. As the founder of the legendary funk band Zapp, he helped create the signature talkbox sound that inspired generations of hip-hop and R&B artists. By the late 1990s, Roger had already secured his place in music history, and his songs continued to reach new audiences through movies, radio, and samples used by major artists. To fans, he was a musical genius who seemed to have many more years of creativity ahead of him. But on April 25, 1999, tragedy struck. Roger was found suffering from multiple gunshot wounds outside his recording studio in Dayton, Ohio, and later died at the hospital. As investigators searched for answers, the case took a shocking turn when his brother Larry Troutman was found dead inside a nearby vehicle from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Evidence suggested that the tragedy stemmed from a family conflict, leaving fans stunned. The cruel irony is hard to ignore. Roger spent his life creating music that brought people together, yet his own story ended in one of the most heartbreaking family tragedies in music history. Number 14. XXXTentacion. Few artists exploded onto the music scene as quickly as XXXTentacion. Known for his raw emotions, controversial reputation, and massive online following, the young rapper built a devoted fan base before turning 21. His music topped charts, his videos attracted millions of views, and despite constant controversy, his career seemed to be heading toward an even bigger future. Love him or hate him, one thing was certain: people couldn't stop talking about him. On June 18, 2018, XXXTentacion visited a motorsports dealership in Deerfield Beach, Florida. It seemed like an ordinary afternoon, but as he prepared to leave the parking lot in his vehicle, a dark SUV suddenly blocked his path. Two armed men approached, and within moments, a robbery turned into a tragedy. The attackers took a designer bag containing cash and opened fire before fleeing the scene. The 20-year-old rapper was rushed to the hospital, but he did not survive. The news sent shockwaves through the music world. Fans around the globe struggled to believe that one of rap's fastest rising stars was gone. The cruel irony is that XXXTentacion had spent much of his career talking about pain, struggle, and life's uncertainties. Yet no one expected his own story to end so suddenly. In an industry where artists dream of leaving a lasting impact, he certainly did, but far sooner than anyone imagined. XXXTentacion's story reminds us that life can change in a matter of seconds. If you believe his legacy and music will never be forgotten, leave a RIPX in the comments below. Number 15. Tupac Shakur. Tupac Shakur wasn't just a rapper, he was a phenomenon. With millions of records sold, hit movies, and lyrics that spoke directly to a generation, he became one of the most influential artists in music history. By 1996, Tupac was at the peak of his fame. He had the talent, the money, and the larger-than-life reputation that made him seem untouchable. But as history would prove, fame doesn't make anyone bulletproof. On September 7, 1996, after attending a Mike Tyson fight in Las Vegas, Tupac was riding through the city when a white Cadillac pulled alongside his vehicle at a stoplight. Moments later, gunfire shattered the night. Tupac was rushed to the hospital and fought for his life for 6 days before passing away on September 13th at just 25 years old. His death stunned the world and sparked one of the biggest mysteries in entertainment history. The cruel irony is that Tupac spent years rapping about survival and danger, yet his own story ended far too soon. Nearly 3 decades later, his music lives on, and so does the legend. Number 16, Selena Quintanilla. Selena Quintanilla wasn't just a singer, she was a cultural phenomenon. Known as the Queen of Tejano music, she captivated audiences with her powerful voice, infectious energy, and undeniable charisma. By the mid-1990s, Selena was becoming one of the most successful Mexican-American entertainers in history. Her albums were breaking records, her concerts were selling out, and at just 23 years old, it seemed like the sky was the limit. If anyone was on the fast track to superstardom, it was Selena. But on March 31st, 1995, her incredible journey came to a heartbreaking end. Selena met with Yolanda Saldivar, the president of her fan club and manager of her boutiques, to discuss allegations of missing money. What was supposed to be a business meeting at a motel in Corpus Christi, Texas, quickly turned into a tragedy. As Selena attempted to leave, she was critically wounded. Despite managing to reach the lobby and identify her attacker before collapsing, she later passed away. The loss devastated millions of fans around the world. The cruel irony is that Selena spent her life bringing joy to others, yet her story ended during a confrontation with someone she once trusted. More than 30 years later, her music continues to inspire new generations, proving that legends never truly fade away. Number 17, Jay Sebring. Jay Sebring was Hollywood's original celebrity hairstylist, long before social media turned stylists into stars. As the founder of a successful hair care empire, he worked with some of the biggest names in entertainment and became one of the most recognizable figures behind the scenes. Handsome, wealthy, and highly respected, Sebring had built the kind of life many people only dream about. In Hollywood, he wasn't just styling stars, he was one himself. On August 8, 1969, Sebring spent the evening with his close friend Sharon Tate and several companions before returning to Tate's home in Los Angeles. What should have been a quiet night among friends became one of the most shocking tragedies in Hollywood history when members of the Manson family cult entered the property during the night. The crime stunned the nation and forever linked Sebring's name to one of America's most infamous cases. The cruel irony is that a man who helped create Hollywood glamour became part of the story that exposed its darkest side. Number 18, Merlin Santana. Merlin Santana was one of the most recognizable young actors of the 1990s. Fans knew him from hit shows like The Cosby Show and The Steve Harvey Show, where his charm and natural talent made him a familiar face on television. At just 26 years old, Santana was steadily building a successful Hollywood career and seemed destined for even bigger opportunities. His future looked bright, and there was every reason to believe his best years were still ahead of him. But on November 9, 2002, everything changed. After leaving a friend's house in Los Angeles, Santana was sitting in a car when he became the victim of a deadly attack linked to a false accusation. The shocking incident stunned Hollywood and devastated fans who had watched him grow up on screen. The cruel irony is that Merlin spent years acting in television dramas, yet his own life ended in a real-life tragedy no scriptwriter could have imagined. His promising career was cut short far too soon, leaving behind a legacy that fans still remember today. Number 19, Danny Locken. Danny Locken was a talented actor, singer, and dancer, best known for playing Barnaby Tucker in the classic musical Hello, Dolly, alongside Barbra Streisand. With Broadway experience and a growing reputation in Hollywood, he seemed destined for a long career in entertainment. While he never reached the level of superstardom, Locken had earned the respect of audiences and fellow performers alike. His future still appeared full of possibilities. But on July 6, 1977, that future came to a shocking end. Locken was found dead inside his Anaheim, California apartment at just 34 years old. Investigators discovered evidence of a violent struggle suggesting he had fought desperately to survive. The case remained unsolved for years, leaving behind more questions than answers. The cruel irony is that Danny spent his career performing in joyful musicals, yet his own story ended as a real-life mystery. Decades later, his tragic case continues to haunt those who remember his talent and wonder what might have been. Number 20. Dian Fossey. On December 26, 1985, Fossey was found dead inside her remote cabin at the Karasoke Research Center in Rwanda. She had been the victim of a violent attack, and the shocking crime immediately sparked international headlines. Investigators searched for answers, but the case quickly became surrounded by controversy theories and unanswered questions. Some believed the motive was linked to her fierce battle against poachers, while others pointed to personal conflicts. Decades later, the mystery remains unsolved. The cruel irony is impossible to ignore. Dian Fossey spent her life fighting to save endangered gorillas, yet her own story ended in a mystery more puzzling than any wildlife documentary. Her legacy lives on, but so do the questions surrounding her final days.